Welcome everybody to another episode of Hidden Truth 7 Day. We have not been at this for weeks due to technical difficulties, but we're most definitely not done yet. We're gonna keep going. We do not have that much time to even do it today, but we wanted to do one just because um, we hadn't done one in a while. Hopefully, we get more diligent and more consistent. But without further ado, Job 18, 7144, jump us off.
All right. Job 18, Job chapter 18. So Bildad answers Job. Okay. So he asked him, how long will it be ere you make an end of words? Mark and afterwards we will speak. Wherefore we count it as beasts and repute it vile in your sight. So Bildad wants Job to stop what he perceives to be foolish talk or to or in error or unlearned, wrong, incorrect, etc. You know, stop talking that type of language. He says that Job is speaking out of anger. Um, as you move down, Bildad literally speaks on how the wicked will fail, and this is directed to Job. Okay. At verse 5, he says that the light of the wicked shall be put out. In 7, he notes that his own counsel shall cast him down. Yep, his own counsel shall cast him down. 16, he says his roots shall be dried up. He goes on to say he'll be driven into darkness, talking about, I believe, the wicked man in general, but definitely directing this, to Job. Okay, so then the last verse says, surely such are dwellings of the wicked, and this is the place of him that knoweth not God. Okay, now, um, man, I always do this on the first chapter. That's not funny. I'm gonna let Hidden Drew kind of make the connections and things of that nature. But I have an actual question here. Okay, I will say that a lot of this is definitely repetitive, but um, does Bildad know about hell or the lake of fire? Um, in verses, I want to say 14, 15, and 18, he talks about, I think, brimstone, the king of terrors, chased with chased out of the world. Hold on. Yeah, and that's all I have for 18. That's all I have for 18.
Um, you know what? I'm not sure that he knows. I think in a lot of cases you have um thought processes of punishment. But I can't say whether he knows about the lake of fire or not. It would be advanced if he did know about it, a place of torment, because the only person who ever talks about a place of torment is Christ. You don't hear about you hear about Sheol, which is like the place of the dead, or where dead people go, but you do not hear about it being tormenting. You don't hear about that. Christ is the only one who really talks about that. So if he did have that level of knowledge, he would be extremely advanced, which means I don't think he does have that level of knowledge, because he is going in on Job. Now, is it possible that he has that level of knowledge and he's going in on Job? Because it is possible that you receive certain revelation about some things and then are just very mistaken about other things. That's very possible. I would lean toward no, because like I say, the concept of a place of torture I do believe only comes in with Christ. Christ is the one that teaches you about hell. Christ is the one that teaches you about the lake of fire. In my head, off the top, I don't remember reading that ever in the Old Testament. Anything, like I say, it's about Sheol and things of that sort. I know there was a place where they would burn their dead. That is talked about, but it's not burning of a person soul, right? Because that's what hell would be. It's not necessarily the burning of the flesh. It's more so the burning of the soul, which makes it eternal. Which a lot of people don't really understand that, because number one, we want God to think like us. That's the biggest problem with hell, is we want God to think like us, but He doesn't. And then we also don't understand eternity. We don't understand eternity. So because of those two things, we don't like hell and things of that sort. But I'm not sure he knows about it. But you're right. This is very repetitive, but the way that they repeat themselves is like, man, this is great poetry. Like this is just amazing. The way they articulate themselves is just like, I read this stuff and I just be like, man, this is not like he's saying the same stuff. He's getting at them, and like some of the, I don't even know if I have this much lyrics in me to be able to describe things in this way. I'm on the wrong chapter. There we go. He says this. He says, how long till you put an end to words? Gain understanding, and afterward we will speak. That's a shot, but that was a dope shot. Like he just dissed him. It's like, yo, bro, you really don't understand anything. But as soon as you do, we can have a proper conversation. That was cold to me. That was so cold, because you got to think about it like this. And Job talks about this, but Job's not in the best situation. Like, like it's a thing, like when you get with your friends and you kind of jab at them or you take shots at them, but you know that mentally they're in a pretty good place. And so it's okay to take the jab. Hey, these dudes is cold because this dude is not mentally in a good place. Like they're constantly going through this back and forth. Job is sitting up there, like he starts this whole thing out cursing the day he was born. He's not having a wonderful week, month, year, or however long this lasts, right? And this is what you say to your man. This is what you say to your man. But he goes into some depths. Like this stuff really makes me put me in the mindset of how wonderful one can preach and still be wrong. That's what this puts me in the mindset of. Like the depths of how wonderful a person can preach, which I mean is a warning, right? It's not just a warning to preachers. It's a warning to all of us that go through the scriptures. How wonderful you can put a thing. How very articulate you can be. How beautiful you can explain a thing and still be wrong. Because although what you're saying is right, the application is wrong, right? And the another thing to be added to is what you're saying is right sometimes, because we don't understand God. God moves in ways that's not necessarily comprehensible to us, and so we have the expectation of God that He's not going to fulfill all the time. He'll do it sometime, and you will have examples of that, but He's not going to do it all the time because He's working off of a different goals. But he talks about this whole he goes into all manner of depths of how the wicked suffer eventually, how they perish eventually, how they're on the clock, right? Hey, bro, anytime you're wicked and you're doing bad stuff, you on the clock. It's gonna catch up with you. And he explains it in a extremely wonderful way. How they're gonna fall. Um, um, terrors frightening them, and strength being starved. Like all of the things that you depended on will fail you if you're wicked, right? That's what the premise of what he's saying is. And the end. Oh my goodness, 21 was jewels to me. Jewels. It says, surely such are the dwellings of the wicked, and this is the place of him who does not know God. He's saying, once your time is up, and I can see you relating this to hell, right? Because maybe in the wisdom that he has, he may not know of hell, although he is speaking of a hellish place that the wicked end up at the end. I just think that he's talking about hell that exists while you're living, not hell that exists once you die. I think he's just talking about living hell, not hell for the soul. But he's saying that this is the place that you will create for yourself in the earth if you don't know God. You'll create this place where your strength will not last, and where things will constantly turn against you. Everything that you put out, all of the efforts that you put out, drain you and work against you and destroy you. And yo, that's true. But what he doesn't realize is that's true for all of us, not just the wicked. If you don't, if the righteous don't allow God to renew their strength, you fall under the same circumstance. You see, you look at a lot of the parables that Jesus tells. Those parables are for believers who believe. You look at the virgins, the one with the virgins and the oil. All of the virgins represent believers. Some had a little oil, and some oil was full. The ones with a little oil meet the same fate as non-believers. And I think that's what he's missing. He thinks that this is something that only non-believers go through. Believers don't go through it. In all actuality, there are those things that will test your belief. And if you don't stand firm, you can end up in the same place as non-believers. And so he doesn't understand that. He doesn't realize that part. He's just strictly making all of this about the wicked. And then you're correct. He's putting Job in that category of being wicked. And Job's not guilty. Job's not guilty. He can't see past that. But we can go right into 19.
All right, Job chapter 19. All right, so Job answers. He asks him, how long will ye vex my soul and break me into pieces with words? So again, here in this chapter, Job really understands that God is in full control of this trial or whatever he's going through. He does understand that. Verse 6 says, know now that God hath overthrown me and hath compassed me with his net. Okay. So then moving down, Job describes, he said, he also kindled his wrath against me and counteth me unto him as one of his enemies. Moving down, Job says, he complains about his family life, and Yeah, so he complains about his family life. And he goes on verse 21. He says, have pity on me, talking to his friend. Says, oh, ye my friends, for the hand of God have troubleth me. And then from verse 25 down, he says, for I knoweth that my Redeemer liveth, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. And though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I see God, whom I shall see for myself, and mine eyes shall behold, and not another, though my reins be consumed within me. But ye should say, why persecute we him, seeing the root of the matter is found in me? Be ye afraid of the sword, for wrath bringeth the punishments of the sword, that ye may know there is a judgment. Mm, that's an interesting how he summed that up. I like how he summed that up there. like you said, they're going back and forth saying the same things over and over again with a different set of these poetic words in this language. Very interesting. So in my notes, I just marked definitely repetitious with the back and forth, like I just said. Then to whom the Lord, yeah. So Job talks about, again, Job mentions that he also kindleth his wrath against me. He counteth me unto him as one of his enemies. Then we understand that in Hebrews, um, the writer of Hebrews is expressing for whom the Lord, loveth, he also chastiseth. Let me not try to quote it word for word, but something along that lines. Whom the Lord loveth, he also chastiseth. Okay. Uh so we need to understand that. And we also, not only do we need to understand it, we need to expect it. And again, how have we been done wrong in this age as Christians? Well, we could go a lot of different places with that, but let's just start with the money doctrine, or the wealth doctrine, the doctrine of the prosperity gospel. That's not doing us any good. along with other pieces of the gospel, is not of this generation. Is not these teachings, these over teachings, and these not considering everything in the Bible and all of that. It's not benefiting people in the long run. It's not preparing us properly. Um, so then moving down. Yeah, so but the way Job ends this is very interesting. I know that my Redeemer liveth. Then he said, and that he shall stand at the latter end, that the latter day upon the earth. Like, how do you know these things? Then he says, and though after my skin warms destroy this body, right? Yet in my flesh shall I see God. Now I don't know how you assume you would live to the end of to see the end of everything, and how you knew that God, or that your Redeemer, I should say, would stand at the latter day upon the earth. I don't know how you know these things, Joe. That's interesting. Whom I shall see for myself, and my eyes shall behold, and not another, though my reins be consumed within me. But the dead will also see, they'll also see. I'm pretty sure too, if we get down to the root of that. But ye should say, why persecute? Be ye afraid of the sword, for wrath bringeth the punishments of the sword, that ye may know there is a judgment. So at the end of the day, what's funny is the friends are sitting here judging him, and they're the ones that need to be careful, because they could be persecuted for wrongfully accusing him. That was an aha moment right there. But yeah, it's a lot of repetition. But again, the Lord loveth who he chastiseth. And those last, how he ended that chapter from 24 down. Those last 6 verses, very interesting type of insight that he had and how he's able to shed light. That even causes me to think about how we as saints, or we as Christians, saints, followers of Christ, can be judgmental, but we must be careful in the way that we judge, and need to understand that wrath and things of that nature of the Lord can come upon us when and judgment is going to come upon all of us. Yeah, and then that's all I have for 19.
Yeah. Yeah. The last thing you said was, real. The wrath of God. Righteousness does not exempt you from the wrath of God. That's the area that's one of the main areas where believers, you see it all through the scriptures that prophets had to deal with the wrath of God. And they were clearly prophesying for God. They still had to deal with his wrath. You see where, prophets, if some prophets messed up and didn't do exactly what God said, they would die. They would just straight up get killed by a lion or something. It is a lot of times people wonder why God doesn't speak to us. A lot of times God don't speak to you to save you. Because if God says specific things to you and you don't do it, he kill you. And this is in the scriptures. So what I'm saying is not off. It's not off. If certain things that God say to you, you choose not to do it, he slaughter you for it. He slaughter you for it. So in a lot of ways, it's very good, because we have this thought process that because God is all knowing and all powerful and all these different things, that God has not established things in his all power that he won't change. And I think that's the part of God that we don't quite grasp. We want God to change things in proof of him being all powerful or all loving. We want him to change things. And one of the things that God also states, when you want to sum up who God is, you have to look at all of the descriptions of God. You can't just look at one part of who God is and say, well, if he is truly this one part, then he should do this, and this. And it's like, yeah, he's that part, but he's also this other part. And so how do those parts piece God together so you can get a proper view of who he is? Yeah, he's all loving, but he doesn't change. So once he established something in the earth, he's not changing it because of love. You see what I'm saying? And so it's like we do not grasp that. And then also another thing we don't grasp is his point of view. But that's something we can talk about later. Which is, I mean, really is relevant for right now, because this is what Job's friends are missing. They're missing, and even Job to a degree. To a smaller degree, Job is missing God's point of view because he does not understand the logic behind why he's being tortured, right? He just understands that, hey, I didn't do anything to deserve being tortured, which God agrees with that, right? God agrees with the fact that Job didn't do anything to deserve being tortured. He says it in the beginning. He's like, yo, Job is an upright dude and righteous. He's holding tight. He hold me down. He keep it real with me. He has this relationship with me that nobody else in the earth really looks like they have, because he puts them in the streets. And so Job is just under the thought process that because of that, none of this should happen to him. he even has a level of understanding that this is, I think his thought process is, to this degree, this only should have happened to somebody who was really wilding, but it's happening to me. And he continuously saying how unjust it is. Because he did not do anything to merit such a judgment. But he just, God don't think like us. He just does not think like us in any way, form, or fashion. Okay, how you color the picture, I don't know I don't care how you desire the picture to be colored. He does not think like us, and so the way that he's moving is from ideas, or from knowledge that we cannot attain. It can only be revealed to us. We cannot find it. There is no way of looking for it. There's no formula of looking for certain truths that you can scientifically put together that'll get you to the answer. Some things God just has to reveal. And if he chooses not to reveal it, you never know. But we go back to the poetry. He takes shots. His friends take shots at him, and he does not seem to have a problem firing back. Okay, he has fired back several times. He did. His friend even addresses him, calling him stupid, and him referring to him as beast, because he's like, you guys don't have any sense. So he took shots at him there, and then he goes on and takes more shots. One of the things that he says is, he says, hey, look, if I indeed have error, because that's what they continuously accusing him of. He said, my error remains with me. In other words, you don't know it. You have no idea what I have done if I've done something. You see? So how can you, what he's saying is, how can you possibly talk to me as reckless as you're talking to me, and you don't even have a clue of what I've done wrong? So how can you put me in a place of the thing that I did wrong was superbly wicked, and then I have designed this world that I'm living in, where I'm being tortured, my skin is working against me, my children are working against me. He talks about that, which hints that he has other children. You look in the beginning, it doesn't say that all his kids died. It just said, pretty much just talk about the ones who are old enough to party. If he had smaller children, those would not have been the ones that died. But it hints at him having children there. My servants are working against me. Everything works against me. And you're saying it's because I'm a wicked dude, when you have no proof and you have no evidence. How could I be this wicked and you know nothing about it? And then you put me in this category. And then he goes and says, this is a part of my torture that God is torturing me with. He not only is taking all my stuff, turned everybody against me. Like, I can't even have any peace in my mind because you guys keep bugging the crap out of me, constantly charging me with false accusations that you don't even know is true, but you're still claiming so hard because of my circumstances true. So he's talking about God's wrath being kindled against him, and he can't go anywhere. He counts me as an enemy, which is a strange thing, because the origins of us, according to Christ, is we all start out as enemies of God. And then you have to make like, okay, so how am I an enemy of God? How do I start out as an enemy of God? The biggest thing is expectation of who God is, instead of accepting who God is. The number one thing that makes you an enemy of God is having an expectation that you know automatically who God is, how God is, what he will do, what he won't do. That's the biggest thing that makes you an enemy of God. Because what happened is, you'll paint God into this picture. And if he doesn't live up to that standard, you now are against him. God has requirements, and he has things and expectations of us as his creation and we don't agree with them. We don't agree with how God executes things. We don't agree with how God has even put us in categories, male and female. We don't agree with that. We don't agree with the job titles he gives them. Husbands love your wives, wives submit to your husbands. We don't agree with those things. And so we are enemies of God because of perspective and expectations. We expect God to respond a certain kind of way. And if he doesn't, we'll either dismiss it being of God, or we'll become atheists. Because we're originally enemies of God. And so in a lot of cases, it's not that God has made us his enemy. It's when we face what God has done in all truth, we don't like it. And so we will contradict what he's done. We will dismiss what he's done, all to paint God to be the God we like, not acknowledging the fact that you just don't like God. And we do that with the scriptures all day long. This is the reason why you have 80 different interpretations for one scripture, and you break up into 50 billion different denominations, and everybody's reading the same book. It's because everybody is interpreting God not for who he is, not for what he says he is, but for what is comfortable for us. We want the God that brings us comfort. We don't want the God that is. You see, we want the God that we understand and that moves the way we think he should move. We do not want the God who already has a way of being. We don't want the God that created everything without us, without our input. We want the God that created everything with our opinion in mind. And that's what we continuously go to as we go through the scriptures. We could read something that God has said he established and dismiss his establishment of it because we don't want the God we serve to have established that thing because we don't agree with it, you see. And so that happens all the time. This is the reason why, like I said, you have a billion different denominations. This is the reason why the people of God can never agree on who God is, why that God is, stuff like that. And the reason why people completely ignore scriptures, don't address scriptures, don't read out or preach whole books of the Bible is because don't agree. That's not the God I want to present. I want to present the God of, it's just like 7144 said, the God of prosperity. I want to present that. I don't want to present the God of gloom and doom, right? Or you got some pastors that just want to present the God of gloom and doom, and they don't want to present the part of God that will want you to prosper. You have to present every facet of who God is. If you do not, you have just created your own God, and that's who you worship. You created a God in your image and in your likeness, and that's who you worship. And that's who most believers worship. Most believers worship the God who's created in their image and in their likeness. And I think Job really puts out some very good statements, some very good sermons. Because these dudes is preaching. They put out some very good sermons that show that you can miss this. You can miss God completely with your own ideology. With that said, that is it. We going to spend some quality time with the brethren, as everybody should. Never forsake the gathering. I'm a strong advocate, even if the gathering is with people who are struggling with their beliefs, struggling with what they know. You should always gather with other believers and struggle and wrestle with them within the Word of God, and pray for God's guidance. Pray for God's voice to guide you. Pray for the Holy Spirit to lead and guide you into all truth. As I say, pray for me. Pray for the channel. Pray for everybody you see on the channel. As we come in to understand and know any of you, we will be praying for you. Lord bless you and keep you.